What if everything you were taught about success was designed to keep you exactly where you are, not by conspiracy, not by accident, but because the people who taught you had never escaped either? Most people spend their entire lives working hard, following the rules, doing what they were told, and still feeling like they are running on a treadmill that never stops. They call it bad luck. They call it the economy. They call it timing. But a small number of people quietly, without announcing it, rewire their minds entirely. And everything changes. This is what that process actually looks like. Here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. The majority of people are not poor because they lack talent. They are not stuck because they lack opportunity. They are stuck because of the invisible software running in the background of their minds, software they never chose, never questioned, and never updated. Think about this. By the time you were 7 years old, your core beliefs about money, success, and worthiness were already being written. Not by you, by your environment, by what you watched, what you heard at the dinner table, what happened when someone in your family tried to rise above the norm. And here is the problem. Most people go through their entire lives executing that childhood programming without ever realizing it exists. They think they are making free choices. They are not. They are running a script. The human brain is not designed for long-term thinking. It is designed for survival. When faced with risk, the average mind does not ask what is the best long-term decision here. It asks, how do I make this discomfort stop right now? That is why most people choose comfort over growth. Every single time. It is not weakness, it is biology. But biology is not destiny. Pause for a moment and look honestly at your own life. How many decisions have you made in the last year that were driven by fear rather than vision? How many times did you choose the familiar path because the unfamiliar one felt dangerous even when you knew somewhere deep inside that the unfamiliar path was the right one? This is the gap between knowing and doing, between vision and action. Most people live their entire lives inside that gap. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that sounds simple but contains a depth most people never fully absorb. He said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice he did not say you have power over your circumstances. He did not promise that things will go your way. He said the power is in the mind, only in the mind. This is not motivational language. This is a precise psychological observation made by a man who ruled the most powerful empire in the known world, while simultaneously managing plagues, wars, betrayal, and personal grief. He had every reason to be reactive. Instead, he chose every single day to be deliberate. That choice, that daily, quiet, almost invisible choice, is what separated him from every other emperor. And it is what separates the people who build wealth from the people who only dream about it. Here is where it gets deeper. Carl Jung spent decades studying why intelligent, capable people consistently self-sabotage. His conclusion was both disturbing and liberating. He called it the shadow, the part of yourself that carries every belief you were told to be ashamed of, every desire you suppressed, every identity you rejected because it made other people uncomfortable. When someone grows up in an environment where ambition was mocked, where success was seen as greed, where wanting more made you arrogant, that person does not simply overcome those messages with willpower. They carry them. And when they start to rise, something in them pulls them back. Not from outside, from within. This is the trap. You can read every book, you can attend every seminar, but if the architecture of your identity is built on beliefs that say you do not deserve to win, you will find ways to lose. The mind is not your servant until you train it. So what does rewiring actually look like? It is not positive affirmations in the mirror. It is not a vision board. Those things have their place, but they are surface-level interventions applied to a deep structural problem. Real change begins with a single question, asked with total honesty. What do I actually believe about myself beneath everything I say publicly? Not what you want to believe, not what sounds good, What do you actually believe in the quiet moments when nobody is watching and the noise stops? Because your behavior will always align with that hidden belief. Not with your goals, not with your ambitions, with what you secretly think is true about who you are. Epictetus, who began his life as a slave and became one of the most influential philosophers in history, understood this better than almost anyone. He said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." The key word is best, not any use. The best use. This requires knowing yourself with almost uncomfortable precision. Imagine this situation. Two people receive the same criticism from a colleague. One person goes home, replays the conversation for 3 hours, feels humiliated, and quietly gives up on the project they were building. The other person listens, extracts whatever is useful, discards what is not, and continues. Same external event, completely different internal experience. Now scale that over 10 years. Multiply it by every moment of rejection, failure, competition, and setback. The person who processes and continues builds something extraordinary. The person who absorbs and collapses never finds out what they were capable of. This is not about emotional numbness. It is about emotional precision. Knowing which thoughts deserve your energy and which deserve to be released. The person who gets rich, not lucky, not born into it, but builds it, has almost always developed an unusual relationship with difficulty. They do not enjoy suffering, but they have stopped letting suffering be the end of the story. Aristotle introduced an idea he called eudaimonia, often translated as happiness, but more accurately understood as flourishing. Living in full expression of your highest potential. He did not believe this was a feeling. He believed it was a practice, a daily orientation toward excellence, not for recognition, not for applause, but because the pursuit of excellence is what a human being is designed for. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius, said something that belongs in every serious person's mind. He wrote, "It is not that I am brave. It is that I know what deserves to frighten me and what does not. That distinction changes everything. Most people are afraid of the wrong things. They are terrified of judgment, of failure, of looking foolish in front of people who will not matter to them in 5 years. And they are not nearly afraid enough of complacency, of the slow, quiet erosion that happens when you stop asking more of yourself." Socrates built his entire philosophy on a single pursuit: know thyself. Not as a poetic instruction, as a survival strategy. Because a person who does not understand their own mind will always be controlled by forces they cannot see. So here is the question this video is really asking. Not, do you want to be successful? Everyone wants that. The question is, have you examined what you actually believe about whether you deserve it? Have you sat with the uncomfortable possibility that some part of you is actively working against your own progress? Not because you are broken, but because that part of you learned, a long time ago, that staying small was safer. And the hardest question of all, are you willing to change not just your habits, but the identity underneath the habits? If this perspective is resonating with you, consider subscribing. These ideas go much deeper, and consistency matters in this kind of work. Here is what most people never see. The person who does this inner work, who genuinely rewires their relationship with fear, with identity, with belief, does not just make more money. They move through the world differently. Opportunities that were always present become visible. Decisions that used to take weeks become clear in minutes. Relationships that were draining get quietly released. Relationships that build something real begin to appear. This is not magic. It is the natural result of operating with a clean, aligned mind, rather than a cluttered, conflicted one. The compounding effect of a trained mind is more powerful than any investment strategy. Because a trained mind will find the strategy, execute it with discipline, recover from the inevitable failures, and continue long after the average person has quit. That is the real edge. not information, not opportunity. A mind that does not turn against itself when things get difficult. At the end of his life, Marcus Aurelius did not write about his victories. He wrote about the daily effort it required to remain clear, to remain just, to remain focused on what actually mattered. He wrote not for an audience. He wrote for himself, as a reminder, as a discipline. That is the final insight this video leaves you with. The work of becoming is never finished. The rewiring is not a project with an end date. It is a practice, and the people who build extraordinary lives are not the ones who figured it all out. They are the ones who never stop doing the work, quietly, without needing it to be seen. You already know what you need to change. The only question left is whether you are willing to begin.